Couple of things. I added a tube. Just ordered a couple of tubes online. This is not a real thick tube, but it's a front tube that will fit my front tire, and from everything I've read online will also fit my back tire in a pinch. So everything I've seen is kind of a trick that people do. Instead of carrying two tubes, you can carry one spare for the front and it will work for the back. So I just leave this one in here all the time for that very reason. Also, I'm going to somehow run 12 volts into this box. So I'm going to come off the battery to a relay, and when you turn the key, I've got to find a circuit in here that will trick the relay or trip the relay and allow 12 volts back here. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that yet, but I'm going to put 12 volts and a USB-C charger in this box somehow. And I think I've shown these, added these, and they're black, so they actually match the bike a little better. I've added my factory or OEM heated hand grips here. And I've added a switch here for auxiliary lights. Now, I bought a kit online, and it came with these lights right here. And they're okay. They don't really do much. The lights are actually two of them. It came with two of them. The other side, this one actually works, so I'm going to keep it around for now. But the other side of this did not work really well at all. So I ordered a kit online, and that's what I ended up with. So this is a spotlight, so it's, you know, further distance basically. And what I did with the wiring harness is I had to make adapters, and I'm going to tie these up here shortly, but I had to make adapters that you could see here. So you can see the plug up here, and then I've got a plug down here. And essentially what I did is I just took the plug that came off of those, wherever those little lights are over there, and I soldered it into this. So these lights will have the same plug-in. My eventual goal, I'm thinking I can get these in flood or focus. So what I'm thinking about doing is having one of them as a floodlight and one of them as a focus. So I'll leave one of them on to give me distance, and then I'll take the other one and swap it out later for flood. I wanted to try them first and see how I liked them. And what that would do is essentially I'd end up with two sets. So I'd order another set of lights like this, but they would be the flood lights, where these are the focus lights. And I would end up with one of each for two motorcycles. So I could take the other set that I end up, when I take this one off or that one off, and replace it with a flood one, I can essentially, I'll end up with one of each for, you know, one of my other bikes. But the other kit came with these brackets, which was really handy. They put the lights pretty much exactly where you want them to be. So the brackets, honestly, it was worth it to me to buy the thing for the brackets. Now what I also did, I can't find it, but I've got another one of these pigtails that are hanging down here, up in here. And if I ever want to, I can make another bracket set like this, but essentially it would keep these two, but then give me an additional bracket across where I could put another light right here. After hitting a deer at 70 miles an hour on a motorcycle, I want all the lights I can get. That hurt, and I don't ever want to do that again. So I've added those lights to the headlight on this transalp, and that is one area that, to me, Honda screwed up on this bike. The headlight sucks on this thing. You can see, but for a $10,000 bike, come on, give us a better headlight. That's insane. I shouldn't have to add auxiliary lights to it. My Africa Twin, I could actually see really well. I could see very well with that one. So they need to do better on the headlight on these things. I've added my 12 volt port. I didn't get the OEM one because I never use the actual 12 volt thing. I always use USB. So this gives me USB. it also gives me a little voltmeter right there. I've also added, I had this, but I've also added this for a two-way radio. What used to live here was this that held my TPMS gauge over there. So what I did is I drilled a hole through the plastic over here. I put a bolt through it with two washers where it kind of, I don't know, made me a mount point so you can see it's good and sturdy. The washer squeezed the plastic and then it gives me a stud with one more nut that screws down on it, and then this screws down just like it does here, and then I was able to just take another nut and screw up to it to hold it in place. So it's really well mounted. When you steer, you're not going to hit it anywhere. You don't even come close to it, and it's out of the way. It's in a place that I had nothing else anyway, so it's perfect where it's at right there. And it's got a magnetic charging base down here that I can easily access. Actually, I can access it here easier than I could over here. And I wanted a way to put my two-way radio on it, so I had to move something up there. I had this right here in the center, but then it kind of blocks all this up and it's really crowded. So my intention is to eventually have a two-way. I bought another two-way radio that should be on its way any minute. When that gets here, I'll test that out on my helmet. But yeah, that's what I've got. This windshield bracket that I bought for like 20 bucks on Amazon has been a awesome addition to this bike. It's given me, now that I've ridden it, I've got right at 4,000 miles on this bike, and I've had it in about a month, a little over a month now. And this made a big difference. And I don't see any real downsides to adding this bracket. I'd already bought the windshield. My dad has a Givy, which is about this high, and then it kind of turns up like this. This one I'd already bought, and I paid as much as he paid for his Givy. And it helped over the factory one that was like down here somewhere. I wasn't getting wind in the face like I was that one. But when I added this additional, 2 inches, where it just picked it up 2 inches, made a huge difference on the bike. So that made a massive difference for me. Other than that, that's about what I've got. This bike has been absolutely awesome. I love the bike. It is something that I ride to work, rain or shine here lately, and I love it. I'm going to have to buy new tires for it pretty soon. You can see I've sort of worn these down a little bit, but I'm going to get the Dunlops, I think, is what I'm looking at. They're supposed to last a lot longer. My dad has them on his bike, and he really likes them. But yeah, that's kind of what I've got to now. Got my lights. I have my extra pigtail up tucked in there. The one thing I would like to do with these, and I wish somebody would just make a little adapter pigtail that would go between the high beams and the factory plug and give me one wire that I can use as a signal wire. And I would put these on I would probably leave the switch. So I would keep the switch as is, where I could enable or disable those lights. But essentially, if I flipped them on, this wouldn't even get power unless I turn the high beams on. So if I flip the high beams on, I want those lights to come on. So eventually, I'm going to figure out a way to do that. I hadn't figured out that quite yet, but I'm going to do that soon. But essentially, that way, if I flip my high beams on, they automatically come on. But if I wanted to just disable those lights, I could turn that off and they wouldn't turn on with the high beams or anything. I'm debating on what I want to do with this, because sometimes I do charge stuff that, well, you know what? I think what I'll do, I'm going to relocate this to the rear back here. So I have a way of charging my cell phone now with this. And so that'll give me my cell phone charger, which is all I really use this for. I'll charge this thing up every couple of weeks, and I'll charge my cell phone. And this one, I had USB-C here and just a regular USB there, and it's got its own on-off switch. So I'm probably going to move this over to my actual box back here. So that will live inside of here. So if I've got something I want to keep charged, it will be charged that way. And I'm going to set it up to where it gets power not from the battery directly, but when you turn the key on. So when I turn it on and I drive, whatever's back here will begin to charge. When I turn it off, it stops charging. But what I keep back here, let me just move this. Generally speaking, is this, for one, is a jump starter, and I've used it several times and it works really well, but it's also an air compressor and it's also a jump box, so really handy. I also keep, I need to fix that. I also keep these in here. Right now I've got a couple of UV5Rs that will go to other people if I need them. Eventually, I'm going to have these set up with Bluetooth dongles that I've already got that will plug in here. And if I'm riding with someone, they can use those. And these are USB-C chargeable as well. So I would be able to keep these topped off, keep this topped off, and any other electronics I could top off. And I think what I'm going to end up doing is somewhere in this box, I'm going to mount a 12-volt setup, where essentially I'll have two wires that go down out of the box, so I'll have to drill a hole and seal it up. Those two wires will come up to like a manifold type deal here, and I'll essentially have a USB charger that goes into the 12 volts and then a way to use the 12 volts here if I want to. So it's going to be some pretty heavy gauge wire. If I'm, say, using a 12-volt air compressor or something like that, I want it to be able to handle the load. And so it will go out to here, have about a 40-amp capacity plug here. So if I ever want to take this off, I just pull the plug. And then it will go under the seat to the battery that's under all this. And essentially, that will power everything through a relay. And then I'll probably have like a switch or something where I can flip the relay on and off at will back here. Or maybe over there. I don't know. I'll figure that out. But essentially, I want a way to charge this stuff, because this does you absolutely no good if it's been sitting in there for 6 months and it's dead. So I want a way to charge it. I've also added one of these Write in the Rain notepads, just because it's always good to be able to write stuff, and I've got a pencil in here as well somewhere. And normally here is where I keep my tool bag, that is somewhere in here. It's over there. Tool bag's right over there. And that usually is all of the different tools that I need. And I'm probably going to build an aluminum clamp to pop these off the rim if I need to. So if I ever have to pop those off the rim, I can change the tires manually on the side of the road, but getting that off the rim is hard. So if I've got some way of popping that off, then that'll be the only real thing that I don't have on this bike right now. So either way, that's kind of what I'm looking for, or looking at. That's what I've done on the thing. I've taken my daughters on this a few times, and they absolutely love riding on the bike. And I'm actually looking at buying a Honda Grom so they can ride with me at some point. But I would absolutely, definitely recommend this motorcycle all day long. It's fantastic if you're on the hunt for a motorcycle. The only thing that I wish they would have done differently is given us a little bit bigger windscreen, a much better headlight. And, you know, I've heard people say, well, why can't they just add this? It's $10 or whatever it was. I would rather add my own. And they had a way of adding it. They had the plug under here anyway. I'd rather buy the motorcycle cheap and add whatever I want to add personally. But I think that looks pretty decent. It's pretty clean. You've got the TPMS over here. I've got a way of charging my phone over here. Everything's nice and tucked away. I've got to finish routing some of my wires, but for the most part, it's good to go. I am going to take this and move it to the back, I'm pretty sure, because anything I want to charge with the battery when it's not running, I can do back here if I wanted to, probably. So either way, but yeah, that's where I'm at with this thing. So you guys have a great day.